Engine builders and phone sex operators. The longer you're on the phone with them, the more it's going to cost you. Tonight, we've got Rick Lowery live on the Throwin Sliders podcast. Here we go.
I don't know how to open after that one. That was probably the best cold open we've ever. That's all kudos to Blair. He came up with that one. So well done, my friend. That was
Thanks.
great.
Yeah, well, it's true.
Yeah, I'm not even going to touch that one. So it'll get canceled 30 seconds into the show. Anyways, we are back again for another episode of the Throwin Sliders podcast, episode 57, as Blair attested to in the cold open. Rick Lowery on the show tonight. Throwin Sliders podcast is part of Scrubbin' Tires Media and the #1 racing podcast in Colorado. Thank you all for making that happen, and especially our every weekers. We appreciate you. I am your host, Brandon Hall, and to my right and your right is Mr. Blair Cooper, driver of the number 32 ASCS Sprint car. Yeah, let's jump right into it. Obviously, we're here for a reason tonight, and that's Mr. Rick Lowery. But first, this episode is brought to you by Hoosier of the Rockies. If you're serious about performance, whether that's on the track or off-road, you already know having the right components and having them readily available is crucial. And that's exactly where Hoosier of the Rockies comes in. They are the official Hoosier tire dealer of Colorado, which makes it incredibly convenient for local racers to get the tires and supplies they need without the hassle of waiting or traveling out of state. What really sets them apart, though, is that they're not just your typical brick and mortar shop. They're right there in the action. Trackside, supporting racers when it counts most. Whether you need fresh tires between sessions or race weekends, fuel to keep you running, or critical components like radius rods, rod ends, wheels, and more, they've got you covered right then and there. Don't have what you're looking for? No problem. They can also order you and your team just about anything they stock in various sizes, colors, and specifications. Just let them know. That kind of support can make or break a race weekend, and it's why so many drivers trust them when it matters most. On top of that, Mark and Samantha Hamilton of Hamilton Motorsports bring real experience and passion to everything they do. They understand the demands of racing because they live it, and they're always ready with the right recommendations to keep you performing at your best. They race, you race, so let's race together. If you're looking to stay competitive and fully supported on or off the track, check out Hoosier of the Rockies and see why racers across the region rely on them. Call 303-632-6360. Visit them on Facebook, Hamilton Motorsports Racing, or stopping by locally in Arvada, Colorado. Hoosier of the Rockies and Hamilton Motorsports, the proud partner of Scrubbin' Tires Media and the Throwin Sliders podcast. There we go. Hoosier of the Rockies, obviously our second episode out with them. So Mark, Samantha, we know you're watching. Appreciate everything you guys do for us, and I hope we're reciprocating on our end. So without further ado, Mr. Rick Lowery, welcome to the show.
Hi guys, how are you?
Good.
Doing well. I thoroughly enjoyed that pre-show. I felt like I was almost going to pump the brakes on you because you were spewing a lot of good stuff. And I was like, man, hopefully he remembers to do all this during the show.
You know what's funny before we get into it is about, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, I had told Rick, I said, oh, you should watch the pod tonight. And he goes, what's a podcast? And he would give me hell and be like, I don't know where to find that. I'm not watching that. I got other stuff to do. And then he called me one day and he goes, man, I heard this really cool thing. And he goes, I think it was a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I've been telling you.
Nice.
So we finally got him. I've been trying for a long time.
I will say, Rick, in your defense, I think the general term for a podcast is probably audio only and not the live feed. So this is more of like a show. So anyway, now you know what a podcast is. We'll just do it live.
I'm technically handicapped, so I didn't know how this was going to work out.
Well, you're a pro. I mean, you made it on the show, which for some folks, sometimes that's hard to do, right? There's a lot of technical stuff. We try to make it easy. I think what you have to do, click 2 buttons and put in your name. Not bad.
Well, that's a lot for a guy my age.
Well, anyway, welcome to the show. And we obviously were talking in the pre-show, and I've had the pleasure of meeting Rick at the track, but obviously Blair, I get a lot of information about Rick and from Blair. And I'm thrilled to learn all about you tonight. So I'm going to let Blair kind of steer the ship, and I'll interject as we go here.
Yeah, Rick, maybe if we want to just a little bit what we've talked about before for the people that don't know you a little bit, it was Rick and Nick on the road. That's his stepson, Nick Haygood. So
Rick and
big
Nick.
name in, big Colorado name in racing, and they also traveled a lot. So Rick, for those people that haven't heard of you, or maybe it's been a long time since they've seen you, give us a little bit of background on what you did, a little bit of the racing side of everything, kind of starting crew chief and engine building, maybe just a basic rundown. We can start there.
Well, there's a lot to cover there, but I'll try to do it as quick as I can. Nick's my stepson, been around him since he was about 2.5 years old. And he did a few things in school, t-ball and some football and stuff like that, but really never found his passion. And we went to a car show. It used to be a tri-state car show downtown. And he saw a quarter midget sitting there, and he goes, "What are those?" And I was always a motorhead from, gosh, I can't even remember how young I was, but if I could bolt a motor on it or make it try to go faster, I was all about that when I was younger. It didn't matter, bicycles, trying to mount a motor on it, motorcycles, if it moved, I just wanted to be involved. And so I was always a gearhead. But that wasn't really Nick's thing. But when he saw the quarter midget, he says, "Oh, what is that?" And I said, "Oh, it's a quarter midget. It's a little race car for guys your size." And he kind of gets this like, "Wow, okay." And probably about a week later, we met with a longtime friend of mine, Jim Pfizer, and his son Tad Pfizer, and met with them, and they showed us how to find a car. And I went in and bought a couple of Tad Pfizer's cars, and we won a lot of races. And Nick was already a little bit older than most kids. Kids like Kenny Lewis were a couple years older and had been doing it longer, and so we're a little bit of disadvantage, but did really well in quarter midgets for about 4 years, maybe 5 years, 6 years. I think it was 6 years, and did really well. Traveled all over the country. We jumped into what they call micro sprints. Back then, it was a little 270, or it was 250 cc's back then, and raced at Fort Morgan, raced in Kansas. Did a lot of racing in that. I think Nick won almost every race he was in that class. And then we moved up and had a mini sprint, a 1200 mini sprint for about a year. Hated that thing with a passion. I couldn't keep a chain on it to save my life. And I said, "Now I got to get into something I know more about," which was automotive stuff. And so we jumped into sprint cars in 1996. Nick was only, I think, 14 in 96. He was 14. And first couple outings, we were just a mess, and took us a little while. And then we went to Rapid City like fools and destroyed a car up there. And I thought, okay, this didn't go how we thought. But the next year, I hired a guy that was a damn good racer, and I built him a car. And I told Nick, I said, "Do what this guy does, follow him." And I said, "You'll be good." This guy named John Gerloff, who's won everything imaginable out there. He was ultimately turned out to be the guy that I became really good friends with, and him and I started the engine shop. I was the financial side of it, and he had the brains about the engines, and I knew just enough to be dangerous. But John came to work for me and helped Nick. John was, if everybody knew him, he was a guy of few words, but when he said something, it mattered, and you had better pay attention because he was a hell of a racer. And John raced with us for about 3 years, and Nick went around him one night at Rocky Mountain Speedway, and John got out of the car and he says, "Well," he goes, "I guess it's time for you to take the kid on the road, see what he's made of." And we did. So that's kind of how the racing thing got started. It never had any idea of ever racing sprint cars. It was just one of those things that kind of fell in my lap just because I looked at that the quarter midget back in the days, and I thought, well, how hard could this thing be? Way more complicated than I thought. And I learned a lot about it. And I can't even tell you how many thousands of hours I spent at 2, 3 in the morning talking to Tad Pfizer, having him explain what makes these things go around. I had no time.
Geometry is the thing.
Oh, absolutely. And that guy was a master. And so yeah, it was a kind of a weird way we fell into it, but so that's how our racing thing got started.
How you didn't drive before that? Then you were just always into cars. I mean, were you like in the muscle cars or
Yeah,
racing or?
yeah. The '70s, I had some of the coolest cars out there.
Did you have a mullet too?
I'm sure at some point back then we didn't really call it. We just were a bunch of long haired.
It was just the style. Yeah.
Yeah, and but it was never like curly or any of that kind of crap. Although I did have a curly perm once back in the '80s, and I think my wife said, "Yeah, that ain't gonna fly."
Do you have photos of it? Can we get this on
No.
the screen?
I'm
Okay.
pretty sure those are all gone.
She burned them.
Allegedly.
But so yeah, the '70s was all about muscle cars, and I literally I'd hang out with guys at Inglewood Speedway, and I won a trophy at Inglewood Speedway. Gosh, I think it was 1975, and then I spent a lot of money for the next 4 or 5 years, and about wound up in the poor farm. And I said, okay, I got to get rid of hot rods, and so I didn't have any more hot rods until about well, I didn't have really any hot rods until 1990, but my wife and I got married in '86, and I owned gas stations back then. I had 2 Chevron stations, and then we grew, and Chevron moved out of Colorado, and so we went to Amoco, and I had up to 4 Amoco gas stations at one time, and that's really, that was I had all of our Amoco stations were repair shops. They had convenience stores, had car washes, and so I was either fixing cars or fixing car washes or something. And so I was just a person that, could always fix something. If I looked at it long enough, I could figure out how to fix it. And so I thought, well, how hard can race cars be? And boy, did I get a awakening there.
Sure. So you mentioned, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, and that's part of the fun of this whole sport of racing is that I've got to help a lot of young guys. It's always fun to see a young guy like Blair that gets in the sport.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say, I don't think he's young, but yeah.
Well, I guess I look at young as a relative term to how long you've been in the sport, not maybe necessarily age. Because I've met some guys that were, well, way older than I am that still can drive a car, still drive a sprint car damn well. And I've met guys that, they just are a train wreck and have been for 25 years. And so it's been a fun sport because of the wide variety of people that you see in the sport and the people that you meet.
Yeah, no doubt. So I was going to backtrack a little bit. You said the USA Performance came about 1996, not 60. Is that?
No, John started driving for me in '96 to help Nick.
Okay.
Because we were tearing up too much stuff, and it was a way different deal coming from quarter midgets and little cars to sprint car. The sprint car gets in trouble in a hurry. And so John helped me for about 3 years, and then he was working for a place here in town called Madcap Racing and building engines, and he absolutely hated it there. And so he says, let's do something to make some money instead of just pissing away on race cars all the time. It's like, I'm not sure it has to be an either or. And so it was kind of coincidental. In 2001, I needed to get out of the gas and oil business in Amoco. It was actually BP oil company by then. And I had to get out of there because it was changing, and I'm not a guy that is great with change on stuff like that. They were messing with my livelihood. But as you see on the car on Nick's car, the Amoco sticker was prominent, and Amoco did well. They paid us a lot of money to keep our stuff on the car.
That's
but
cool.
In 2001, everything just kind of changed, and I called John up and I said, "Okay, it's time. I'm going to get out." And I sold both my last 2 gas stations. Some guy wanted them way more than I did, and I sold those. And then opened the engine shop in 2002. And John and I jumped my plane. And back then I was flying a lot. We jumped my plane and we started flying all over the country, buying up equipment and having it shipped in here. And it took us about a year to get it all together. We opened up a shop and had far and away the nicest, newest equipment in town. And I knew John was a really smart guy. He was self-taught. He had built some really great race engines for guys like Jack Hodenshield, We did the motors for Doug Wolfgang for his son, and just a lot of really big name guys we built some motors for, and and so I thought, okay, this guy's a real deal, and so we started the engine shop, and it started off kind of when I got out of the gas station business. It started off as kind of a hobby, and it's like, okay, well, I want to build my own race engines because we've been struggling for the last couple of years with race engines blowing up, and that drove me insane. And so we just started, we just kind of went off on a tangent, started building our own, and every time we build another engine, it seemed like it got faster and better. Technology was just getting out of control back then. Early 2000s, a lot of change in head flow and things like that, and so. There's 3 guys total that came with John. Well, 2 guys total with John and plus me, and it was just the 4 of us for many, many years, and the same ones for about 17, 18 years, and then guys started doing different things, and finally when John decided to retire, I knew the writing was on the wall. It's like, I'm getting too old for this crap too, and so finally I just decided I'd had enough and decided to retire.
So where was the actual brick and motor shop? Pueblo or?
No, here in Denver. It was at 75th in Washington. And
okay.
We started.
I act like I know where that's at, but I have no idea.
Well, it's basically I-25 and I-70.
I do know where that's at.
North of there about a mile. And
okay.
We bought a building up there and just kind of started it from scratch and literally had no customers and was just kind of, I went out and I beat the streets. I paid a couple of salesmen to go out and, go to other engine builders that had less equipment than we did so that we could convince them that, we could do the stuff that they couldn't do. A lot of pretty intricate stuff, different block work and head work and so forth. And it grew slowly. I thought the first 2 years I was going to be eating top ramen pretty much every night, and then it just kind of started word of mouth. We had a couple guys, Darren Crocker and Roger Avance and Joe James Jr. Were all using our engines up at
big
CNF.
Names,
and they all use our engines, and they all won a lot of races and some pretty big profile races. And so word just kind of started spreading, and it took a little while to get known. And then we started doing things. We brought in the Hoosier tires. There really wasn't a legitimate Hoosier tire dealer here, and I was selling about 6,000 Hoosier Hoosier tires. By the time we closed up, I was doing about 6,200 tires a year, and I went to Mark Hamilton and told him, I said, hey, I'm getting ready to retire. You want to do the Hoosier deal? And he said, yeah. He goes, that'd be fun. And he asked me for a little bit of guidance getting started. And man, he's taken off, and now he's got a trackside trailer and everything. So it's cool.
And they're on a podcast.
I'm glad I see him, and I'm glad that him and his wife Samantha are really nice people. And Mark's just a great guy. He's treated me really well, and so it's been a lot of fun, and that's probably the greatest asset that I take away from everything I've done these last 31 years in racing is the people I've met and some of the best people out there, and there's been a few that I tell everybody makes me happy. Some for coming, some for leaving.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But it's been a fun ride, and really enjoyed meeting a lot of people along the way, and getting to talk with people still like Blair and Brian Rader and Austin Gossel tonight called and talked to me for about an hour, and so that was kind of fun catching up with him. But yeah.
It was, it's funny too. It's kind of for those, and I've never really, it doesn't matter, but how Rick and I met, I actually had gotten the sprint car and they sent it. We've talked about this on the show before. I thought, I'm going to buy a race ready to rock. And when I got it, it was shipped in pieces. There was not a piece that was assembled. It was a bare cage, and the rear end was stuffed down through there. I was like, oh my God. And I'd never even been in a sprint car or seen in the cockpit. So I'm like, I got to figure out how to do this. I did as much as I could off the internet. But when I got to the engine, the fueling system, I'd never seen mechanical injection. I'd had the 1200 or the Lightning Sprint, and it was all electronic. You just hook up the wires and the fuel lines and you're good to go. But Dave Booz, he's in the comments. But I called him, and I always kind of, we were racing together. Johnny and I were in lightning sprints, and they were talking about making the jump. But I said, man, I need some help. And he goes, you got to call Rick Lowery at USA. And I thought, this guy's going to think I'm so dumb that I bought a sprint car and I literally don't even know how the fuel pump hooks up the lines or where they go. But now I think after we started talking, Rick made it pretty easy on me and then I started just extending the phone calls, and then they turned into hour and a half until I finally called him so much he answers the phone still to this day as, what can I possibly do for you now?
Right.
Every time. Yeah. But I think I talked to him, a lot of these guys that help me out, I've talked to him more than my wife probably on the phone in our entire relationship. But yeah, it's just funny how that goes. And then he was obviously selling the tires, so I'd drive up there and get fuel and tires from him. And then it was actually, that's the one thing with Mark and Samantha taking over that Rick never did for me, is they actually deliver fuel and they'll bring me tires to the track. So, service with a smile instead of grouchy ass Rick, just giving me help.
Yeah.
But, he's taught me a lot. So it's been, it's like you said, Rick, it's been a lot of fun. And that's what I always tell my wife. I'm like, we'd be friends even if we didn't talk about racing. I just said, I don't know what the hell we talk about.
Well, apparently Rick is the other woman in the relationship. So.
She knows who I'm on the phone with if I come home
right.
and we're chatting. But and Dave Booz said Rick had the fastest Model T in high school. Just ask Abe Lincoln. He was in Rick's class. So yeah, thanks for the hookup,
Good
Dave.
stuff. Yeah. Ryan Rader's been in the comments too, but for those watching, we are going to do a little question segment with Rick, because I know a lot of people probably have some. But yeah, so obviously there's a lot of avenues we could go down right here. And I don't know, I'm just absorbing a lot. You mentioned planes, and we mentioned in the pre-show. What do we got going on there?
I started flying. From the time I was, probably 6 or 8, I was always obsessed with planes and scuba diving. I don't know why. Those are so totally different things, but I was always obsessed with that stuff. And so in 1980, I joined a flight school. Used to be out on Airport Road out east of town. And I gave him, I think, about $800, which was a lot of money to me back then. And the person that owned the flight club disappeared, and that was the end of my flight training. I think I got like 2 hours of class, and that was the end of that.
Perfect. You're ready to go.
So I saved up for a couple of years, and then I started flying out of Centennial, and just was obsessed with flying. And so in 82 or 83, I think it was, I started flying. I got my private pilot's license in about 4 or 5 months, and then loved it. And I had a really nice single engine Cessna that I decided to lease back to the club so I could buy something bigger and faster. And of course,
imagine that.
So my wife and I got married in 86.
Don't mess that up.
So it was we got married in 86. I think it was just after that. I told her, I said, I really need a twin engine plane. And so I wound up buying a plane. I couldn't even fly. I flew commercial out to Indianapolis and met a doctor that had this just absolutely beautiful plane, and bought a twin engine airplane and paid a commercial pilot to fly it back here because I couldn't, and kind of learned on the way back a little bit about it. And then immediately got into a flight school with an old guy that had to be like 130 years old. Best pilot on the planet. He was old. I think he was either World War II or Korean pilot. He was probably in his late 70s when I started flying with him, but just a great pilot, good guy, and made me a good pilot. I'm still here, so I guess it made me a good pilot.
Yeah, no doubt.
I put several thousand hours in that twin engine Cessna. It was a fast plane. It was a lot of fun. We used to, in fact, we were flying a lot back when Nick started racing quarter midgets, and a good friend of mine named Clay Meeson, him and me and all the kids would fly out to wherever the track was, Indianapolis, Ohio, wherever. We'd fly out, and then my wife and Clay's wife would take the truck and the trailer and drive out there and meet us.
Damn.
And I'm sure that they probably, didn't ever stop and gamble or anything along the way. But it was just a lot of fun. That the kids enjoyed it, and it just kind of was just a fun thing to do. And flew a lot back in the 80s. And in fact, I took Mark Mateka, the crew chief and owner of Jeff Heffer's sprint car and his midget. Anyway, took Mark back in the 90s somewhere and flew out to Kansas, to Waukee, Kansas, to watch a race. And Mark and Randy Roberts were there. And I took him and Randy's wife, and I forgot who else was in it. But the 6 of us jumped in and took him flying all over Kansas because we had some downtime because the weather was a little bit crappy. And took them flying, and they just thought that was the greatest thing in the world. Mark still talks about that. But yeah, it was a unique experience, something fun to do. And then as we got more and more serious, I couldn't afford to fly, and I really wasn't staying. It takes a lot to fly that plane, and it takes a lot of hours just to stay current with my instrument rating. And so I felt like I was becoming a danger to the public and probably myself because I wasn't flying enough. And so I think it was late 90s, 97, 98, somewhere in there. It's like, yeah, this is too expensive a sport and having racing. It's like one's got to go. And so currently I'm looking for an aircraft. And since we're not racing anymore, I want to start flying again. And it'll take me a little while to get back up to speed, but still a lot of fun. It's a great perspective. I encourage everybody to see it. It's so different than commercial airplanes because you fly lower altitudes. You can fly to high altitudes, but it's not very fun. But you get to see the world from a different perspective. You go like, oh gee, I never noticed that lake there, and I never noticed how tall that building is, and never noticed those trees are coming up in a big hurry, and little things like that. It was just something that was just kind of fun to do, and the oil companies used to summons us back in the 90s a lot. About once every 2 months, they summons I was a dealer representative for all the dealers. We had 200 dealers here in Colorado, and I would fly out to their headquarters, either in San Francisco. Amoco's headquarters was in St. Louis and Chicago, and I'd fly out there, and they would just give me a check for whatever it cost me to fly out instead of flying commercial.
Dang.
And so it was kind of a fun deal to do, and got to take some of the oil execs on a flight and do things like that. So it was just kind of a fun thing.
But, so question on that, when you go to buy a plane, do you test drive it? I mean, test fly it? How do you? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, you do several things. I personally have a pretty high knowledge of whatever I would be looking for. I've owned 6 different aircraft over the years.
Wow.
And so I'm pretty knowledgeable about the mechanical workings of it. So I'd go out, if I find a plane, I'd call and ask a bunch of questions, like buying a race car. You ask all the right questions, or at least you try. And then if it sounds right, you go out and you look at it, and you do a several hour walk around, inspect, and pull different inspection panels and make sure it's airworthy. And then usually you go fly it. And if you agree,
that's a lot of trust though, that you're putting in some random stranger, right? Like, yeah, this thing's it'll fly.
I figure he doesn't want to die any more than I did that day.
Yeah, I would make sure he's with me, because then he knows damn well that it's fly worthy.
But yeah, I mean, and those don't always go quite the right way. I bought a brand new twin from a guy back east, and I flew it back to Denver, and it only had 4 hours on the engine coming back to Denver. And I took off at Centennial and was headed to Jeffco to have some radio work done, and lost an engine.
Oh shit!
That got my attention real fast, and that was exactly the same thing came when. It's like, that son of a gun just sold me a defective airplane. It had a brand new engine on it, and it just happened to be a manufacturer's defect.
Dud. Yeah.
His insurance company bought me 2 brand new engines because the other one was about to come apart.
Wow.
But so yeah, that was a weird deal. But yeah, you're right.
I would have lost my mind.
There's a high level of trust there, and that plane is not a plane that likes to fly on one engine, and so you either get one chance at doing it all right, or you don't, and that's the end of it.
That'd have been it for me. Sayonara, just get it over with.
Yeah, well, that's what it goes through your mind. You're thinking, okay, who's going with me today? Because you start to look around. Is there a field, baseball field, anything that you can, put it down in without taking somebody else out? And fortunately, at Centennial, you're real close to Cherry Creek Lake, and so that was.
I live actually right by there, so know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
You know what?
But I still wouldn't want to land a plane there.
No, and that wasn't my option. But if worst comes to worst, on a single engine plane, when a plane loses an engine, it wants to roll over towards the bad engine, and it can get upside down in a hurry. And so if you make even a small mistake, you don't get to tell about it. So it's kind of like the Greg Biffle deal. I followed that from start to finish, and that was, if you read it, there's no reason that should have happened. I mean, they, from the very get go, they had problems, and they still took off and still flew it.
Yeah,
and it didn't end well. And so yeah, it's so you only get one chance to do it wrong.
Yeah, up there.
This is such a stupid thought, but now it's in my head and it's going to come out of my mouth. But if you do get another plane, you have to put a little Japanese flag under the seat so that if it ever does go terribly wrong, you can hang it out the window before that thing goes down. So anyway, that's just
not a kamikaze pilot.
Well, if it goes down, you might. How funny would that be on the news? Just a guy going down. But anyway, sorry that I told you it couldn't leave my head.
I'm glad that's the first thing you think of Rick.
Not invite to go with me.
Yeah,
but it kind of that triggered another thought, and we actually talked about this not too long ago. And because Rick, you, like we had talked about a little bit, you didn't do a whole lot of driving. It mostly was Nick. He was crewing, kind of supporting that. But there was a night where it sounded like you and Nick had a little bit of a confrontation about how the car was handled. This was in the 1200cc
I have
cars.
no idea what you're talking about.
We got to hear that story. So,
all right, so we in the early days in '95, I think it is, we had a 1200 mini sprint, and we were racing at Rocky Mountain Speedway. And I was one of those people that thought, okay, if you just spend enough money on the race car and, you know, buy a good engine and this and that and the other thing, you just got to win. And we got a little cocky from other classes because we had done so well. And I don't know why, but that 1200 just hated me. It was like the devil. And so anyway, Nick and I got into it one night, and I said, you know, if you can't drive it, I go, I'll find somebody that'll get in and drive it. And he gets out of the car very calmly, and anybody knows Nick, he just doesn't get wound up very easy. He gets out of the car very calmly. He hands me the steering wheel, and he goes, "Feel free to get in." And it's like, uh-oh, I might have played that hand just a little bit too far.
Whoops.
So I did, and I actually got around the track pretty well, and I've been in the sprint car many a times over the years, and the super mod, and you know, I turned some pretty good laps. But long story short was that I got in the car, and I don't remember if it was in the heat race or the main, but I just wasn't comfortable because I was in Nick's car and I wasn't comfortable. I'm screwing around trying to adjust a seatbelt or something while we're going around under a yellow flag. And in the old days in Rocky Mountain, they had this huge berm on the inside of the track. And I must have been looking down, and you know how it is when you're driving down the highway and you're grabbing a Coke or something, all of a sudden you're 3 lanes over from where you started. And so I'm goofing around, and all of a sudden I'm upside down. I didn't know what happened. I just kind of tipped over on the right-hand side. And they had announced that I was in the car for the night. I have no idea how. That might have been something Nick did to me. I don't know. But anyway, I'm driving around under yellow of all things. And I'm goofing around, and all of a sudden it just kind of tips me over. I caught the inside berm, and it just flipped that car over like it was nothing. And I'm laying on my side, and everybody saw me try to put my hands out. I mean, I think everybody saw me try to put my hands out. And I mean, I think they could have just sold tickets to a rerun of that night.
Oh, no doubt.
Everybody in the place was laughing. I don't think I ever lived that down. And when I went back and talked to Nick about it, I said, I guess that'll about cover who's the crew chief and who's the driver.
Yeah, I think you learned a lesson there.
Never had a problem after that.
It'd be cool to hear Nick's perspective on that, because I'm sure he was just laughing hysterically.
You know, it's probably one of those nights that we'd all like to block out of our mind and never bring up. I didn't know.
Well, I think you got the short end of that deal.
But actually, you know, I've done okay. And when in 2005, 2001, 2, and 3, and 4, we were racing ASCS sprint cars on the dirt, And then we lost the Rocky Mountain track in 2005. And so somebody got the brilliant idea we could run them on the pavement out at CNS. And so we all changed our cars around, bought pavement tires and everything. I didn't know how it was going to go. And I wasn't about to let Nick get in and get killed in the damn thing. And so we actually went out to CNS, and I got in the car the very first time. And why I picked the 410 car to get in, but it was pretty wicked 410 back then. And I jumped in and was taking laps. And I give you my word, it was just a practice day. Everybody was in the pits was watching because they again knew I was in the car, and that was a rare occasion. And when I came off of turn 2 and was coming down the straightaway, people were backing up from the fence, I can assure you. And I mean, you see people just like this, and they thought I was going to come through it. I never touched it, but I had really fast laps. A guy named Larry LaPointe was a good friend of mine back then. He used to race with us, and he goes, "Man," he goes, "those are some fast laps." He goes, "They're a little scary, but," he goes, "they're fast." And I said, "Well, it's not like it's I've been in the car before, but." I just wanted to see what it was going to feel like because I really had no idea what to expect, and I got in the car several times because there was some times what Nick would get out of the car and he would try to convey to me what he thought what the car was doing, and I didn't get it. And so a couple of times I'd get in, and I did that with John Gerloff when he was driving one night. He just the car sucks. I go, that's a driver. And so he hands me a steering wheel. It's like, been down this road before. And I got in and made some laps that night during practice in the afternoon. And oddly enough, I went, oh, wow, I get it, what he's saying now, because I couldn't see it from the grandstands. But I could feel what he was saying. And it's like, okay, I get this. And so it's actually helped, I think, several times in the later years, not the beginning, but in the later years, it helped me understand what a driver was dealing with, and so that was kind of fun, and it really made me have a completely different appreciation. That place was fast, and there was not a lot of recovering if you made a mistake out there.
Yeah, I will say, like me, 3 years, I guess, into kind of understanding more about dirt sprint cars. But like it's funny you mentioned that, Rick, because I vaguely, or not vaguely, I really remember last year, I can't remember which Calhan race it was, Blair, but I'd be standing there watching you and then come out in the pits and I'm like, oh, I'm going to tell him, he looks tight or he looks loose or whatever. And then I get up to Blair and he's like, no, I was loose. And I was like, well, never mind. It looked like you were tight, so I'm just going to shut up. But it is like such a disconnect just watching and not being like in it, but you can only have one driver at a time, I suppose.
Probably the most masterful person that I've been around is Mark Bottega. He can watch a car and literally tell you if a radiator bolt's shaking loose. I mean, the guy, I've been around him for a long time, and I just have such a huge respect for him. He can look at a car and tell the difference in what the driver says versus what's real, and he can convey that to the driver. And that's why he's had, I mean, Gary Taylor and Kenny Lewis, and I know there's been a ton of people. I think he's crew chiefed on some cars when Sammy came into town to race. And Mark's been around this sport for a long time, and he was a damn good driver himself. He never talks about it. He was a damn good driver himself in a midget. And Mark he has a thing, and I used to go and stand next to him, and he'd say something, we'd be out practicing or something, or maybe even in a race, and he'd say, Nick looks tight or Nick looks loose. Like, I didn't see that. What do you see that I'm missing? And that is an absolute art to be able to look at a car and tell what's really going on, because you kind of have to learn to disconnect yourself from the car and look at the driver, because if the driver's in there and their arms are crossed and their arms are flailing and their body's flopping all over the place, it's a different thing than if they look calm and the car just stinks. They're just there's not any other nice way to put that. But sometimes the car's just bad, and sometimes the driver is making it way worse than it looks, or maybe making it better than it should be, and sometimes maybe making it worse than really what it is. Because if a car is really tight, a lot of times the drivers will try to snap that car at the apex of the corner, try to snap that thing and make it go. and then they shake it loose, and then the driver comes and says, "Oh, the car's really loose," and it's just not. And it's hard to convince a driver of that. It's really hard, and it's hard to break a driver of those habits when the car's tight. Yeah, they got to figure out how to get around the corner, but they have to also understand that it's because the car was too tight that they snapped it loose, or that it's way too loose and they drove out of it, and that's why they hit the fence. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a guy almost spin out because the car's so loose, and then they try to drive out of it and they drive up the track. And, oh man, the car's too tight. Like,
no.
But that's where it's really come in handy for me a couple times to get in and try to feel what they're trying to convey, because I look at it and it took me a while to understand that there's a direct correlation between what the car's doing and what the driver is doing, and you have to be really fast to be able to see it. And some of these cars that have doors that come up on both sides all the way up to the head, it's really hard to tell what the driver's doing. I've always liked it that you could see in the left side of the car, and I usually position myself in the track. A lot of people watch me, and I go to the center of the track so that I can see the inside of the car, because I want to see what the driver's doing. I don't care what the car's doing. I can fix the car. I can't change what the driver's doing if the car's a mess.
Yeah, no, that's interesting vantage point. I will say Blair's brother Austin is also another one that he can just sit there and he won't even watch Blair, his full, hot laps or heat, and he'll just go to the pits and automatically be thinking, all right, he's tight or loose or needs help here. And that's just like, all right, I'm just going to follow you because I'm not, I mean, asphalt for me, obviously that's way easier, but dirt, it's something about it. I don't know if it's like you said, Rick, like not being able to see Blair or another driver in there with their hands, what they're doing, but like just the pitch of the car, what the rear end's doing. Like I got to do my homework there because I've gotten it wrong more than I have right. So Blair, don't listen to me is what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Except for fuel.
The gas pedal, the steering wheel, the brakes. I mean, there's so many things in there, and people have watch me. I'm probably a guy that's easy to spot at the end of the night. I'm the dirtiest guy in the pits every night. It doesn't matter what night it is, because if the car isn't, in my opinion, if it isn't perfect, I will keep changing it until I believe it's perfect, or until I just run out of gas and I'm just done. But I usually look like I got drugged by the car through the pits, because I get in and I'm a hands-on kind of guy. But yeah, it's always been a challenge to try to figure out what's going on, and that's probably the most fun of the racing for me, is trying to maybe not outsmart the next guy, but you try to do a better job than the next guy.
No doubt. Well, should we should do some questions? I think we're at the almost. Yeah. You want to do questions?
Yeah, I'm not sure the FCC is going to allow this.
I was like, this is just like one of our normal conversations with less curse words. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly.
Let's fire up the ad and then we'll get back to it.
Yeah, so we'll take a little halftime break here, I guess. Get your questions, comments ready for Rick as we queue up this Mountain Ops ad. But another great partner of ours for the podcast, the show Mountain Ops, as you know, Blair and I hammer on it every single week. But if you're interested, merch, supplements, keep you guys going. It is getting warmer. The camera doesn't do it justice, but I am lobster red from not wearing sunscreen today. But it was hot was where I was going with that. So make sure you're hydrating out there, especially all the race car drivers, because it is that time. But anyways, Mountain Ops, as the ad will tell you, use code TS Podcast at checkout, 20% off, as a thanks to you guys for watching the show. So queue up those questions for Rick, and we'll see you on the other side. Whether you're chasing checkered flags, chasing elk in the mountains, casting a line, or crushing early morning workouts in the gym, there's one name every high performer should know: Mountain Ops. This team fuels athletes, hunters, racers, and weekend warriors with the cleanest, hardest-hitting supplements on the market. Let's be honest, this sport isn't for the soft. Late nights in the garage, long drives to the track, and hot evenings in the pits and in the car. We are built different. That's why we run on Mountain Ops. Their supplements hit hard, feel clean, and don't have all that junk you can't pronounce. From early mornings to late nights on race day, this is the stuff that keeps the crew moving and ready for the next lap. Want in? Head to mtnops.com, enter code TS Podcast at checkout and get 20% off your order. That's right. Enter code TSPODCAST at checkout for 20% off your order. You don't just want to show up, you want to win. Fuel like you mean it. Winners use Mountain Ops. Proud supporting partner of the Throwin Sliders podcast. There we go. Get you some Mountain Ops. All right. I believe as we hopefully, I know Ryan Rader, Tara, all the fine folks, Dave Booz, everybody in the chat, all of you watching, and we can see how many of you. Hey, we got one on YouTube, whoever that is. Appreciate you. Anyways, get those questions, comments rolling. But Mr. Blair is actually going to lead us off with one. And I will say I was driving today and he sent me this and I laughed out loud, actually, if you know what that means, Rick, the LOL.
We got to start here, Rick. And this one is from another friend. And we were actually just talking about Mark, but his other half there on the racing team, Jeff Hefner. He brought up a text that we were talking earlier today. And he said, be sure to ask Rick Lowery if he ever had to strip down to his underwear to drive the rig home from the races and what that was about.
Well, I think it go back to what we were just talking about, that I get so filthy at the races that people are like afraid to be around me sometimes.
Like Pigpen off of the Peanuts, right?
Well, and I always just kind of wear jeans and my red, white, and blue shirt that kind of was our theme for ever and a day. And so, at the end of the night, people look at me like it's a little scary. And there's been a couple of times that I think that, some things have happened where I might have said something, because I didn't want to get in my motorhome or anything and sit, in a really nice seat covered in gook. And there's been nights I've been covered in oil and everything else and covered in blood. So, oh yeah, we had a little accident out at Hayes, Kansas one night. And we were starting on the front row during the main, and we had a mag go bad, and I had to change the mag, and then we had to fire it off, and we couldn't get the stupid thing to fire, and I ran up to the car real fast and gave the tire a big bump while somebody's trying to push it, trying to get it to fire, and the tire just latched onto me and rolled me over and smashed me in the ground.
Shit.
I was bleeding profusely, and the paramedics came over, and they were there to drag me away, and I told my wife, I said, get some blue towels and duct tape. And my wife's a nurse, and she goes, you need to go to the hospital. I said, we are starting on the front row. We are not going anywhere.
I'll die tonight.
I took blue towels and wrapped around my head and duct tape. And I think a couple of pictures of that might have got out. And so
we got to see that.
I mean, my shirt was just soaked in blood. And
what, there's like a head lesion or what happened?
Oh, I had a gash when I went over, and it caught me between the tire and the Nerf bar on the right side.
Good God.
It just drilled me into the ground like a rag doll. And
I think I'm gonna start calling you a cat, because I've heard you had an engine go out in a plane and you got literally ran over by a sprint car tire, and you're still able to talk about both of them.
My wife's ran over me twice trying to load the race car in the trailer.
So there's 2 more lives, so you only got 5 more.
Yeah, I'm just about out.
And you know what's funny is they weren't even loading the race car. That's what's crazy about that one. She just had enough.
Right. Said enough. Anyway, sorry. That's that's
well, anybody knows if they ever come to my trailer at the races, and I usually get there pretty early.
I'm gonna stay as far away from you as I can after this.
There's usually gonna be a pretty crazy story somewhere in the evening. So,
right.
I'm sure Jeff's heard more than enough the crazy stuff that's gone on. But you know what? You don't do this stuff for 30 years and not have stories. I mean, if you did, you didn't have a very good career, because that's the best part of it, is the stories.
Well, when we were talking, I think he said he was rolling around, like, I don't know, either pacing or warming the car up. And he said, there's Rick stripping down. I didn't know if you got covered in oil or fuel. So he said, it's always something.
I've been covered in fuel, I have a fuel leak and Nick pulling the pits, and I go pull off the hood and a line comes flying off. You get drenched in fuel, and you're thinking, it's going to just take one guy to a cigarette, and that's going to end it right there.
That's safety first.
Been covered in oil many a times over the years. You have a line break and you're standing there.
Is there a minimum dress code at these tracks? Just Rick's walking around in his boxers.
Depends on where you're starting. if you're starting in the front row, there's no dress code. If you're starting in the back, yeah, nobody wants to see that crap.
Noted. Okay. That is a fair point, though. I mean, you don't want to be a flammable hazard walking around because who knows what could happen. But yeah, anyway, we do have some questions, comments here. We'll start with Ryan. And by the way, Rick, he has been grilling you over your age in the comments here. You can go back and watch all this and call him after the show. Ryan Rader.
Oh, well, he's a youngster.
Yeah. What's your favorite track you've raced at?
Rock Springs, Wyoming, without a doubt. We've won more races there than any other track in the country. Knoxville will always have a place in my heart because in 1999 we set the all-time track record there by a good margin, and during the Knoxville Nationals, and that will always have a place in my heart that you just remember. But it's never been very kind to us. It wasn't kind to us the rest of that week either. But I
feel like it's hard on stuff going.
There is when people say, "Oh, it just tipped over." There is none of that at Knoxville. You crash and you crash hard. I don't care. You'd be pushing off and crash hard there.
Or under caution.
Well, and there's nowhere to go because if you crash, you're probably going to hit the fence, and that steel fence don't move. But Rock Springs, without a doubt, anybody that's been there knows that it's just a fun place. Very different ends. One end of the track is super dry slick. The other end is usually rutted and heavy and fast. Just a fun place. It's old grassroots racing.
Yeah. I think Blair had obviously I wasn't there that time, but you've told a lot of stories about how much fun that was.
Yeah, because I've only been there once, but Rick was really the one who talked me into because that's a 7.5 hour drive for us. And I think we had the option to go south, and he's like, "You got to go there. It's fun. He used some choice words, but basically, if you're not a gasser, you're not going to like it." And then I'll know. But so we went and I think there was only 14 cars. And the first night, Rick dialed it in over the phone. He gave me an idea where to start the car at, and we were pretty close right out of the gate. And then the second night, we ended up second there.
That was when you were battling South Dakota boy.
Brink, yeah, he's been on the show.
No, the other one. Can't remember his name.
Trimble won, I think. I don't know if he ended up winning both nights. I know Adam won.
Anyway, it doesn't matter.
South Dakota.
Oh, Speckman?
Yeah, wasn't he when that was trading?
That was Casper.
Oh,
yeah, that was a different.
I don't know that I've ever seen Speckman at Rock Springs, but
that's my fault.
There's been a host.
Same state, different track. Yeah,
host of guys. We used to see Scott Boguski there. He showed up the first few times like, wow, these guys came a long ways. He came from Seattle area to race with us. And
what's funny is growing up in Wyoming, Rock Springs is not known for a destination. Like people are like, obviously it's on the I-80 corridor. You can stop there for gas, but probably don't stay too long kind of town.
Yeah.
And to hear all you guys say, "Oh, it's like so," I'm like, "What the hell?" Like, I would have never. I didn't even know they had a racetrack until like 6 years ago. So it's just not it's weird. It's not an
awesome facility too.
A lot of guys don't like it because it gets
meth money will do that.
Ruddy. It usually gets a little ruddy in turn 1 and 2, but that's part of the fun because and I think I've told Nick 1,000 times. It's like, man, tighten up the crotch strap because I'm telling you this thing's going to get ruddy tonight. And they used to have a sprinkler system all the way around the top of the track in turn 1 and 2, and they would run that sprinkler for a week in advance. And I mean, there'd be ruts 5, 8, 10 inches deep, and if you hit them, you better be hanging on because it'd toss you clear out of the park. I can't even tell you how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment's been tore up there, but fun place.
We didn't have that either night. Now the only problem is it's kind of known for taking rubber too. If guys are worried about tires, so it rubbered up on like lap 8, and I was flat-footed for 10 laps. That would be my only thing, but it was still pretty racy because if a guy didn't nail the rubber, like stick the right rear in it. In fact, that's how Brink and I were battling. I think he got a little free and missed it, and you go sailing by guys. So. Speaking of that, and I don't know if you've even seen this, Rick, there's a video. In fact, when you started telling me about Rock Springs, there's a video of Tanner Holmes when he was a little bit younger and he started running like ASCS Frontier and all that. Well, he's at Rock Springs. Well, in the main, you can see Nick go by him for the win. on like the last lap or last 2 laps or something. So it's kind of a cool video for anybody that's never seen it. You can just look like Rock Springs ASCS, Tanner Holmes. I mean, everybody knows Tanner now.
Podcast alumni, yeah.
We've raced a lot of really good racers out of the Northwest. I don't know. Every time they pull in, I look like, what in the world made you drive, 1,800 miles to come here?
I was going to say, because being in Jacksonville, Oregon, where he's from, that's quite the.
It was like
I think that Tanner used to race over there, but yeah, we raced him probably 4, 5, 6 different times over there.
That's cool.
And he was always fast, always had good equipment, and he was not afraid of the gas. So he beat us a few times. We beat him a few times, but it was always a battle.
He's a good kid.
I think when it rubbered up, we had the advantage because we ran Rocky Mountain for so many years. And that place used to rubber up terribly, and so we kind of always hoped about mid race that it'd rubber up because all the guys that had 8 inches of stagger on, they were done. They were absolutely done. So that's probably my favorite track. I would say it's probably Nick's favorite track as well. They're Rapid City's always been fun. It's not the raciest place, but super fast. So if you need adrenaline, that's the place to go.
No doubt. Well, Blair, I'll let you take this one since it's your other half.
Oh, Tara wants to know, is there a track you didn't have the chance to race that you would have liked to?
There's a lot of those. I think that we've probably raced at better than 200 tracks around the country.
Good God.
I think probably the only one, and I'm kind of glad that we never made it, but Eldora was kind of a bucket list thing. But I'm telling you, there's so many guys of junk stuff there because it's kind of like Knoxville. You don't go to Knoxville and you're not fast once. You got to go to Knoxville about a dozen times before you go to the Nationals. So you kind of have that out of your head that, wow, this place is scary. And if you screw up, it's the end of that car. Eldora is kind of like that. I mean, it's a super fast place. It's a skill place. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. But I'd say that's probably the only track that really comes to mind. I mean, I can't even think of another place that would just stand out like that. But it was always a bucket list thing. But kind of always, it's like, oh, gee, we can race at Callahan. I don't want to go to Eldora, kind of a thing.
Sure.
Because it was Callahan's an hour drive and Eldora was like 20-hour drive. So
yeah.
But
well, it's funny you mentioned that too, because I guess obviously there's tons of crashes at every track, but Eldora, Knoxville, all that, and you can watch highlights on YouTube or whatever of crashes if you're so inclined to do so. But like, I feel like for me, it didn't put it in perspective until that huge crash last year with Tyler Courtney, and I was like, when you see him, that guy, whoever it was, smash into him, it's like, it puts it into perspective just how fast they're going on that track. Cause like camera angles, and that's, when you take a fan that's never been to a sprint car race. Cause like when we're watching upstairs, I'll tell my wife, like, well, I guarantee you they're going 140 into that corner. She's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like it's a visual thing that you can't really, cause like asphalt cars, it's a little different. They're screaming and you can see it, but like the wheels are turning so fast on these sprint cars. But like watching that Tyler Courtney crash, I was like, I don't even know how fast they get going at Eldora, but holy crap, they're moving.
Yeah, it's just one of those places, kind of like Knoxville. There's no easy crashes there, and just because of the overall speed.
Yep.
I think it was David Gravel with quick time for track record was like an average of 142 miles an hour, I want to say. So at Eldora, which is.
We raced the 410 in 2000 with the All-Stars and NCRA at Belleville on the big track.
Mm-hmm.
That was stupid. And by the way, we destroyed a car that weekend too. What's left of it is still hanging underneath the grandstands in the pit side. But somebody decided that they wanted to get off and just drove right inside of Nick, and that was the end of it. And we were running in the front four when it happened, which was kind of sad because we were pretty dialed in. But man, when I watched that, I thought nobody can survive that crash. We never had that violent a crash anywhere. So it's scary when you get involved in that. I mean, every crash is scary, but boy, when you're on those super sized places, that's just insane.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
They're going back to Belleville with the Outlaws this year. It's going to be nuts.
Yeah, they were I would have to guess. I mean, there was no official way. I think we tried to do the math with the size of track and everything, and it had to be above 150. I'm guessing closer in the 160s. It was insanely fast, and you just sit there just hoping nothing goes wrong, and then when it does,
Yeah.
okay, I'm done with that place. Never had any desire
That's
to go
scary.
back.
Yeah. I can't even imagine what it feels like in the car. Like obviously you don't have a sense, speedometer or anything, but like just the
bad
motion
thing is,
of going
it's
that
not
fast.
good racing. That's the worst part. It's
Yeah,
horrible
I would
racing
agree.
because you once you get 5 feet away from the car in front of you, unless they break, you're not going to go around anybody. It's
Mhm.
not competitive, close racing. It's so big,
Yeah, and like I've never been like the biggest fan of like sprint cars when they, you start getting on that big of a track and the air matters and you're drafting in dirty air and like getting tight and all that. Like it to me, it kind of takes away the purpose of a sprint car in a sense. Like these things are meant for like not littler, but definitely smaller than Knoxville and Eldora type tracks. And like, I don't know, that it kind of takes the fun away from it. Cause then, like Blair said many times on the show, like you do separate the men and the boys, and there's like 3 men on the track and there's 15 boys. And it's just like, well, what kind of show is this? But anyway, what the hell?
If it's a dyno session, I mean, some of that can turn into good racing. Like even they recut Volusia a little bit, but
Yeah.
overall, if they got something hammered down, you're not. If everybody's flat footed
Yeah.
around a big half mile, what is weird to me, and I don't know if
Well, it was 2 years
could
ago,
ever-
Knoxville with Kyle Larson led every single lap, decided not to
Yeah.
change the right rear at the halfway break, and it was just like, what are we doing?
Yeah. You know what is weird though? Like what you kind of mentioned, Brandon. I don't know, Rick, if Nick had ever mentioned this, but like even when you go to Black Hills, you're carrying a ton of speed, but on the bigger tracks, it actually doesn't feel as wild as being on like a short, tight bull ring. Because you have some room to move around, and the only time that something when something bad happens, it's like, oh shit, we were flying, like a Dodge City or a South Dakota or even Sweetwater, any of those are for what we have for size. But yeah, Eldora and those places, they're just always just ripping around that thing.
Well, I always had the confidence that Nick would not do a lot of stupid things in a race car, but I didn't know sometimes who we were racing with, and that's what scared me on big tracks like that. Was that you get a guy? Well, that's what happened to us at Belleville. Was that it was a guy that had no business being there. He's running half speed, and he decided he wanted to get off. There is nowhere to get off, and he just decided he was coming up the track to get off, and you can't. You got to go to the infield, and man, I mean, he just drilled. So that's the kind of thing that it scares you because even if you do everything right, you're kind of at other people's mercy sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And I think like, obviously we're a little partial to like Eagle, Nebraska, because it's close in the region,
place.
But like, yeah, like turn 4 out of that place every single time. It doesn't matter what 305, 360, 410. It's just something like that's what we need in sprint cars. Not this like, oh, how fast can you go down the straightaway type of thing. I don't know.
Eagle is a track that very few people respect for what it is, but all you got to do is look at who the stars are that have come out of that place, and you put it together and say, wow, that's not an accident that probably 50 of the best race car drivers ever have raced at Eagle a lot of their career, especially back in the older days in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, Wolfgang and Schatz used to race her a lot, and just you could go down the list of names of superstars. Eagle has a reputation; it's just probably unmatched, other than Knox.
Yeah. Did you guys have a good run there?
We've done okay there. It was a place we destroyed a car there one night. Just
I'm seeing a pattern.
Same thing. A guy he just came up, and because we didn't know what their tendencies were and so forth, and Nick was running around the outside, and we were going forward really well on the 410. It was a 410 World of Outlaws show again, and I think the 410 hated me. We had a few nights where it didn't go that way, but again, it's one of those places you don't want to go to Eagle and say, oh, I'm going to just show these guys how it's done. And it just doesn't work that way because the guys that are there every week, week in and week out, they know what lap it's going to rubber up. They know what lap the cushion's going to build and all that. And so you're at a sizable disadvantage because of the weekly racers' knowledge there.
Mm-hmm.
I could go down a list of people that we did motors for there that were just wickedly fast. And
Mhm.
those guys were just that was like a whole new level of crazy.
Yeah, it is cool to see, like with High Limit, Eagle in particular, like you'll see the local guys that aren't part of the tour per se, and they're making the show. I mean, they're probably not going to
Yeah.
outrun a Kyle Larson or someone like that, but they're making the show and they'll run 10th, and it's really cool to see.
Eagle might be the only racetrack in the country that I know of that still has a B main on a regular basis for sprint cars.
Mhm.
I have no idea how. I guess there's not a lot else to do in Eagle, Nebraska. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but
Corn farming, probably.
I'm telling you, and it's really amazing to watch because if you go into a lot of these little tiny towns and they're some of the toughest competitors you'll ever find.
Mhm.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
doubt.
that's crazy. Nebraska's got nice cars, and when we go down there, I actually really like racing there. And even the 360 stuff, they'll pull them out of the trailer, and it's like, man, they got some nice stuff, So a lot of guys that you might not have heard of that probably kick your ass, they're
Yeah.
legit.
Oh yeah,
Well, it's damn hot and humid there. They're just in the garage all winter long, not doing anything.
Yeah, and Eagle's one of those places where you go in there and you start looking around and say, like, okay, who are the superstars that we got to be able to race with, and you look around, it's like, well, I don't know that guy, I don't know that guy. I'll tell you what, at the end of the night, you know who everybody is because they put it on, and you better come to race. If you didn't, you're going to go home disappointed. So, like I say,
Yeah.
it's one of the few places that I can remember. There's almost always a B feature. I don't know today if it's still the same way, but for a lot of years,
Mm,
that was one of the few places you always had a B feature.
Yeah, I hear that quite a bit.
I mean, I don't know about the local show, but I believe last year the High Limit did for sure. I
Oh yeah,
remember that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big, I think full field almost.
Oh yeah.
I mean, or what they take, but it was like there
Mhm.
was guys that didn't even make the B, so they were
Mhm.
stacked. But
Yeah,
No,
qualifying
that's-
took forever. I remember that.
you can look through a pretty wild list of names that'll be in the B feature, and that make a damn good A main anywhere in the country.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
no doubt.
I
Looks like we. Oh, go ahead, Blair.
no, go ahead. You
I was
first.
just going to say we got another question from your wife, but you go ahead, Blair, and then we'll pull it up.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you, Rick. Speaking of wives,
Uh-oh.
your wife was a diver, right? I mean, you talked about scuba a little bit. Was she was a rescue diver as well? Is that when you guys met?
No.
Is that the right story?
No,
Did she
was a
rescue you?
nurse. She was a
Like
nurse.
Wendy Peppercorn?
Cindy was a nurse back in
Okay.
that day, and we both dove out of the same dive shop, but we didn't really hang out or anything. And one night, this was 85, I think. Yeah, it must have been 85. It was about a year before we got married. A bunch of us were sitting around a bar and got way too much drinking going on. And we decided at that point I was a master scuba diver and a rescue diver, and I wanted to do something different. And we all started talking, and I said, has anybody ever done an ice dive? And they said, no. Patty, the people that were certified through, they said, no, nobody's ever done ice diving, and nobody has ever become a rescue ice diver. And
You're out of your mind.
so we went to Grand Lake and we cut with a
Hey.
chainsaw. We cut through 48 inches of ice, and
That's why I proposed to my wife at.
well, and that's where I met Cindy because she was a nurse and she was kind of
there you
on,
go.
helping out in case something went horribly wrong, which I had a high propensity that was going to go wrong or something because, your regulators freeze up and all kinds of bad things. I mean, just your body freezes up. You can barely move. And, but she was up there and in between dives, I said, oh, it's too cold out here. Let's go get some hot chocolate. And then about a week or so later, she drove by one of my gas stations just to say hi. And
Were you out there in your boxers?
no, but I have a great picture. I'd never show it. When I was standing on the ice, it was actually a sunny day. It was about 5 below zero, but it was a sunny day, and we were all in these really intense, heavy wetsuits. And I had on this black wetsuit, had yellow stripes all over, and I had a cowboy hat, my black cowboy hat, and my cowboy boots on.
Good God.
And
She had to have him.
I guess that was the magic. and a lot of people walk up to us to this day when they meet us, and I try to take a little of the tension off when they meet my wife and me at the same time. And I said, yeah, I know exactly what you're thinking already. How did she land a guy like me? And so it's always been anybody knows my wife. She's completely different than I am. She's more quiet and not quite as irritated.
Balances you out a little bit.
But she was funny because she came by the gas stations and we talked and went out and had dinner or something, and the rest was history.
Well, and the reason I got into that is we had this conversation last week. Obviously, Nick, you kind of running him up through the ranks a little bit, but do you think at the time she really understood what sprint car racing and all that was for her kid to get in the car? And or was that something you guys talked about, or was it like, hey, I'm going to put Nick in a sprint car and we're going to go racing and try to run big shows in World of Outlaws? Or was there a conversation like, oh, this is dangerous,
No.
it's not a good idea?
No, we raced in the small cars for, what was it, about 8 or 9 years through all the little cars until we got to a sprint car. And I think that, in fact, the first date I took Cindy on was at Colorado National Speedway when it was a dirt track, and we went out and watched the World of Outlaw race.
I love these stories. Your first date, my wife would have been like, I'm out of here.
That was my first date.
Well,
I took my wife to PPIR.
There you go.
And it was crazy because she had no idea what a sprint car was or a World of Outlaw car, and at that moment in time, I had no dream, no delusion that I would ever even own a car like that. We were there, and I said, "Oh, we got to come up here and right at the beginning of turn one and sit there to watch when they're qualifying." And she got blasted with mud. Old clump of mud went in her beard. She was going to throw it out like, "No, that's good luck." I go, "We're gonna cheer for that guy." I think at that point she's like, "Wow, this is just crazy." So I have no idea how 40 years later we're still together, but it was just one of those deals. It never really wasn't like we sat down and said, "Yeah, we're going to do this and this and this." It just each year that went by, Nick got a little bigger, and each of those cars got a little smaller on him. And so it's like, okay, well, we got a fair chance in a sprint car because he was always a bigger kid because he got started so late. He was a bigger kid in the small cars than most of his competitors. And so it put us a little bit of disadvantage. And even then he did really well. And I think it just was one of those things. It's like anything in life. It just kind of evolved. I think when I got the first idea to go buy a sprint car, I don't even know if we ever talked about it. I flew down to Texas to look at one from
probably for the best.
We were going to buy a car from a guy named John Bankson, who became a really good friend of ours and later got killed in a sprint car, which that didn't go well for knowing somebody like that. But it was just one of those things that it just kind of evolved on its own. It was never anything planned, so yeah.
Interesting.
I like how life is.
Well, yeah. Well, since I said we'd get Tara's question in here, we're going to give you back your night. But Tara says, if you could describe your entire racing experience / career in less than 3 words, what would you say? That's a tough one, Tara. 3 words.
Philosophical.
First of all,
I don't even know 3 words.
I've never been able to say anything in 3 words.
That's exactly right.
I know a lot of people think I'm kind of the quiet, shy type, but maybe not. Wow, what was the question again? A racing experience?
If you could describe your entire racing experience or career, I guess.
That was crazy.
There you go.
I mean, we've been at the highest. Well, and I think it was Tad Pfizer that told me this when we first got in quarter midgets. He goes, "There's no higher highs and there's no lower lows in this world, and nowhere are they closer together than racing." He goes, 1 second you're the fastest guy on the planet, and then about a half a second later you're just parts on the wall.
Yep.
And it was so accurate because I can tell you that and I've watched it. I've been part of it, but it's racing is, I don't know that very many people plan for a racing career and do it as long as we have. And I look back, and there's been some tough times, there's been some great times, and there's been some very quiet rides home a few times. And you just learn that it is what it is, and you either give up and you quit, or you shake it off and move on, go to the next track.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I think we might have to do a Rick part 2. I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface tonight. So
we'll get him back. So he's got nothing else to do now, Rick.
Now that he knows what a podcast is too. It's good.
I'm just serving the buffets down at the Blue Hair Special at 3:00 in the afternoon. You know, I try to help the old people through the line. You know, it's like, come on with me. I know the way.
Oh, jeez.
Well,
buddy, we go ahead, Blair.
No, I was just going to say, you know, Rick, if you ever get bored, I've always told you could be my car owner and work on it and just take care of it and set it up, and then I'll come pick it up and we'll go racing. So I appreciate it.
Go.
I can tell you that racing is probably a lot easier on me than doing yard work. So I might take you up on that. You never know.
I think as many phone calls you put into Rick, I think he's halfway there. He's just virtual at the moment.
I'm just trying to get it back at him. That's what I always told him. I said, you're welcome for putting your grandkids through college. So, but no, he's helped me out a lot. So we always appreciate it. And then I was actually thought about getting a little dial a crew chief sticker for my car. Cause Rick, whether I call him or he calls me, there's been a lot of nights where I'm like, it's doing this. And we've even had some video. Cause like, that's kind of
You've been on the phone with him during after a heat race. I remember.
Yeah. Cause sometimes you can Rick will watch it on TV too. And he'll be like, that's you. It was either me or it was the car or a combination of both, or we're in left field. And man, there's been some nights we've gotten the car pretty close over the phone. And I mean, obviously I've still got, a lot to learn, but I think we've even gotten into some deep conversations from static roll center to, center of pressure and then engine stuff. And so he's taught me a lot. So I got to keep him
learning. The last race that we raced at Casper, before we retired, I was still learning that night. And so that's something that anybody that tells you they've got it all figured out, they're delusional. They're about to get beat is what they are. That's really what it's about. Because if you even think about slowing down and trying to understand and learn, I still, that's why I say I still enjoy talking to Mark and a lot of people out there. I'm still friends with a lot of guys with super modifieds and sprint cars, different things. I still enjoy every minute of it. I still enjoy their friendship and talking to them, and it kind of keeps my brain functioning and doing something other than digging holes in the fence and filling up holes that my dog dug.
There you go. Well, it sounds like Ryan Rader's trying to get a hold of you if you can sneak it in between you and Blair's 23-hour conversations a day. So I got you, Ryan. I'll plug you. Anyway, well, we appreciate you giving us some time tonight, Rick. And like I said, I met you, I think it was last year before, but it was a pleasure getting to know you. And I definitely think we got to get you back because we barely scratched the surface. 31 years of stories into an hour and 17 minutes. And that's flights and gas stations and all other things. So we'll definitely get you back.
It's been an interesting life. I can tell you that. I never had, I grew up dirt dog poor. And so it's been an interesting life along the way. And so, it's been great. And like I said, the people are what made it that way. And especially Nick. I mean, he's humbled me a lot of times.
Yeah, well, we'll get him on here too.
Yeah, well, yeah, not
see how full of shit you are. We'll get the real stories out of him.
Yeah, definitely. We need to do that. Not at the trade show because that was kind of a one-off deal. But
if you still have a podcast, you might get him on. But after having me on, you might get canceled.
No, you're good. You were right in line. This was good. So we appreciate that. What I was about to say though, on an ending note, is what did we say? You're on life 6 right now. So try not to use up any of those before we talk to you next.
Well, I'm still thinking about going. Well, I'm still doing a lot of diving with the kids and Nick. And
here he goes.
I'm really interested, get back in flying. So I've been studying up, and so who knows? I might use them all up one of these days. So.
Well, we got to get him back on soon then.
Don't forget your Japanese flag.
Here we go.
I'm getting bored these days, so I got to do something crazy.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we appreciate you, buddy, and we'll give you back your evening, but greatly appreciate you coming on and talking racing with us.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
All right, Rick Lowery on the Throwin Sliders podcast. Take care, buddy.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, that was fun. I was getting a lot of information. Obviously, like I said, Blair's obviously talked highly of Rick for years and years and years since I kind of been obviously knowing Blair and having the podcast and helping Blair when I can with racing. But yeah, it just brings it to forefront when you actually get to talk to some of these people. And I know he is instrumental to what Blair's doing. So greatly appreciate Rick coming on. But yeah, I don't think we had anything else planned for the night. Any races? I didn't check out the schedules. I should know this.
Oh, I know. I think they're back. I know it was Monster Trucks Callahan this weekend. Pueblo had a race, so I think they kind of split between there and Holyoke. But I think season's going to really start kicking off now that the weather's getting better and stuff like that. So May, I know everybody's hitting it hard. There is ASCS is going to be in Cortez. We're not going to make that one. I'm still waiting on freeze plugs and stuff, and talked to Shark today, and so they've got those coming. We'll re-drill the motor. I know everybody thought that after, I guess I'd heard on all the announcers and stuff, they said I blew the engine, but for those that saw, I started spraying water out of 4 and down into 1 until it finally blew the plugs clean out of it. But they've got a fix for that. So I've had that problem once before, and luckily was able to finish. I was actually at Sweetwater.
It's warranty, right? Free of charge.
Yeah. Well, they did send me some freeze plugs that you got to drill and tap. So I got to pull the motor and probably get that all done. So it'll be a pain, but luckily we'll get that remedied and hopefully not have that issue again. But yeah, I think, Cortez, they're going to have sprint car shows. So if you're in that area, it's going to be some of the Southwest Tour guys. And then, I'm not sure from here who's going, but that'd probably be a fun one to check out. And then we're back at Callahan in May. And I think in between there, you've got a few at each of the local tracks. So if you're Colorado, I think I talked to Speckman today, South Dakota, Black Hills, and that tour, or at least the home track stuff, is going to be starting up in 2 weeks. So really end of April, beginning of May, we'll start really covering some of the regional and local tracks. But even High Limit, I think they're finally coming back. They've been on break.
A couple weeks. They were bam, bam. They're like twice a week. And then, I don't, like I said, last week I've been so tied up with chasing 2-year-old around that can fully put together sentences now. So it's been fun. But
it's crazy.
Have to teach her how to say sprint car and high limit so we got
to get her out there.
She would love. Yeah, she'd love it. So anyway, we'll be back again next week. TBD if we have a guest or not, but definitely Ryan Rader, if you're still listening, we need to get you on the calendar. Because I know we had you at the trade show last year, but we need to give you a full hour of your time because you have a lot to say about all these guests. I want to see what they say about you. Glad I'm not in that position. It's good to be the host.
Well, I can't even imagine what goes around because they're probably like, "Who is this guy?" It's on my end of
That's how I felt about you, and your picture was grayed out because for whatever reason it. I think it's not doing it, but okay, he's listening. But yeah. I don't know the story how I actually met Blair. I was like, who is this guy just talking shit week after week after week? And I think it was Scott Bremkamp was like, oh, that's Blair Cooper. I was like, oh, okay. And then we had him on and here we are.
Yeah.
Anyway, 3 years.
Jeez, time flies.
3 years. Yep. 6 years for scrubbing tires. So getting old.
Yeah.
Anyway, we appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed Rick as much as we did. And again, obviously, if you're hearing this, you're already listening to it afterwards. But you can go back on our Facebook page, watch it. Go back on our YouTube page, watch it. Spotify, Apple, if you prefer just to listen to it on your drive into work, that works too. But appreciate all the support. Thank you to Hoosier of the Rockies, Mark, Sam. Appreciate you guys, and Mountain Ops. Couldn't do all this without you guys. So definitely go hit up those two fine companies for their respective products and stuff, and support those who support us. So that being said, I'll pass it to Blair for the old salute tonight.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that junk. It will be on Spotify in the morning or later tonight. So please help us out there. It seems like, we were actually, I looked today, there's actually starting to be charts. So #1 dirt track racing podcast covering regional stuff from basically the bottom of Canada all the way to the top of Mexico. So there's a sliver where we've got it. So we appreciate everybody growing this thing, and we'll try to keep improving, getting better, and having fun. I mean, that's the best thing. We'd love to get on here and talk about racing. So try to get some different perspectives and keep going from there. But appreciate Rick coming on. Like I said, he's become a good friend of mine and helped me out so much. So super grateful to him. And then he passed us on to Mark and Sam, got the introduction there, and said they're good people. Go work with them. They'll take care of you. And that's the case as well. So we'll get it going, and hopefully we can, I'll be dialing up Rick, and hopefully he can give me some good tips over the phone, or we need to get his ass to the track. I told him, bring Nick too. Shit. It's can't stay away too long, but I know how it is when you're not racing. It's hard to be at the track. So other than that, I guess we'll plan on doing this again next week.
Yep. Monday, whatever date that is. If I get a calendar up, 20th, 420.
420, we're going to blaze it.
Yeah, we might have to bust out the old pop can.
Hookah pipe.
Yeah, there you go. 7:30 Mountain. Join us again, and we'll talk everything racing. So Blair's got the salute, and see you next week.
Keep throwing them.
This was another production of Scrubbin' Tires Media. The Throwin Sliders podcast is hosted by Blair Cooper and Brandon Hall. Video and audio was created by Bryce Holcomb. Please like, share, and leave a 5-star review. And as always, keep throwing those sliders.